this. I want to bring this all back to the tech, the humanist in you and the meaningful connection. And you hear that word a lot too, but really where people have this, they're square in their hips, they're square in their shoulders, they're looking people in the eye at an event, they're talking about ideas, and they're relating in a way where they're kind of providing nutrition for each other, whether it's practical or on a more being level. And, that's what we aspire to at the Keynote Curators, bringing in people like you to talk about that and demonstrate that, that's what's the value out there. ChatGPT, learn what matters, prepare for the future. It's all important, but that meaningful connection. I know you feel strongly about this and bringing meaning to the use of technology and preparing for the future. Finish us off with kind of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you. Because I do feel strongly about that. It is an undercurrent of my work is the concept of meaning and human experience and the human condition, that it's fundamental to the human condition. And I have a whole, rant, I guess you could say, a bit in comedic terms about this. But I'll just get straight to the relevant point that you're making about the events, because I feel like we can all understand that there is a time and a place when you need a celebrity, a bookable name, right? Like you need somebody who's going to sell tickets. Everybody understands that, and that's one condition. You also might think of something that's like it's so novel, it might be an equivalent to that. We were talking about Sophie the Robot, for example, like maybe that sells tickets. Maybe people are just curious enough that they want to have that experience. But I think if we all think about what it's like for ourselves when we're attending a conference and we watch a keynote, what we're hoping to take away more often than the celebrity impact is, I just want there to be something that's like, wow, I can't believe I never thought of it that way. I'm never going to unsee that or unhear that. I'm always going to think of it that way from now on. It's what we were talking about. It's transformative, right? You want there to be a transformative experience in some way. And sometimes that's achieved by somebody being very funny or entertaining on stage, but often it's achieved by somebody being very, very tuned in to the meaning of the environment that they're in and the context of the discussions that the attendees are there for and the priorities that they have, what they're coming there with, the concerns that's on their mind and their heart. So if you can find somebody who comes to the stage with that level of empathy and cognitive preparation and, just the willingness to be very present in the environment, soak it all up and give it all back, and do that in a way that leaves the attendees, completely overwhelmed. Like, I was there because, it's the opening keynote. I didn't know I was going to get like a life-changing experience out of it. I think that's what everybody's looking for. And it's really hard to hire for, admittedly. Like that's a tough thing. But that's why you have people like Seth.
Well, no, thank you. And the inverse of that, thank you. Look, words matter, right? And a speech can change a life, and whether it's somebody who's taken a trauma, albeit inconceivable on a personal level, and has the mastery and the skill to gift that story away, not make it about them and transform and leave you in a different place. And like you say, you can't unsee it or you can't unhear it. Or both. I think they mean the same thing in the spirit of what I'm saying, see and hear, But that's really the art and the mastery of it. And it's not just like take an order. Oh, we have $5. We want this topic, and we want somebody from North America or whatever. Just there are buyers out there, but I think that as the speaking industrial complex expands, what's going to stand out, what's going to rise to the above the mean is exactly what you said, that aha moment. And it could be one moment, Rest is not a reward. It's a resource.
Yeah.
I heard that one the other day and I was like, dude, like that, like, I'm not going to say like my life was altered, like there's an inflection point, but that made me stop and be like, totally. Like,
was that Dr. Robin Defoe Hanley, or who was that?
It was Sunil Gupta.
Oh, okay. All right. Awesome.
Lovely build up. We talked a lot about energy and being in the red and the blue, but it was like, I need to rest. It's like but are you going into that rest? Like, what is your intention,
Yeah.
And it's not like you have to be overly freaking consciously thinking and overworking, like, I'm going to rest and this is my intention, but if you can baseline it and inhabit what your intention is without being consciously having to think about it, it becomes more restorative, more regenerative, more kind of what it was intended to do.
Yeah,
So,
and I think some of that starts with even during the vetting process. I've had a number of these kind of calls, the pre-sales call, pre-booking call with clients where you can sort of tell that you're on the right page or whatever. And I had one next week. I have the event where the lead up to it, the first few calls I had, they actually had a lot of the management team on the call, which was really surprising. I don't often experience that. It's
right.
usually the event planner, maybe there's an executive of some sort. But they had a lot of the leadership team, and I thought, oh, this tells me something right away, right? They're really invested. They want the right message out there, the right experience. They want it to be a reflection of their deeper values and what they're about as a company. And it was a really fun call because they're all really smart and passionate and committed people. And so we got through that call, and then we had actually one more. And on that second call, I said something at one point. I go like, I get the impression that it's a really good thing that I don't work for you guys, because we would never get anything done. We'd be just nerding out, talking intellectual stuff all day. And they laugh.
Right.
They're like, you're on to us.
They're like, oh my God, we got found out.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's like when you understand the DNA of an organization through those calls, and you can tell not only is the speaker going to be able to deliver their speech, right? But that these are professionals who now understand each other, and that you can transact in this business, in this context, knowing that the all important purpose and values are going to be safely shepherded through the process.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that more than anything, most event organizers and those booking events like really, really want. And that's what, as a professional keynote speaker, we want to be able to deliver that well for you, that you're like, God, wasn't that just the best thing?
Yeah. I mean, look, guidance in that sense, like being the Sherpa, the squire, or even your mayordomo, like it helps because it's not like over inundate me, send me your values, send me your mission statement, but let's talk it
Right.
through. I personally, I've been doing this for 20 years plus. When I can, and I try to have 100% attendance record, I like to be on the calls myself too with the speaker. Sometimes I do the introduction, sometimes not. It's not like I'm lurking or anything. I want to hear how you, Kate, are responding, and it allows me to represent you better in the future.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
I want to hear how my client is operating and words that they're using so it can help me serve them in the future. And in the
100%.
wild case that I need to kind of intervene lightly, I will. Or if I know the client really well and the speaker really well, there's something that I could provide that could, deepen a little bit. Just yesterday, I was on a call. I was on a red eye. I made the call. I landed. I was able to get to the office. I made the call. And they have very big Fortune 100 company. The CEO there was a lot of leadership changes. CEO is no longer there. There's new. And that's in the mood. And nobody really spoke to it.
Right.
So I felt compelled to just say, hey, look. And I said to the client, I said, look, if I'm overreaching here, overstepping, by no means, please, stop me or whatever. But I think it's important in the big picture level, at least, to say the sands have shifted. There's a little bit of turbulence and a little bit of unsettled. And they were like, yes, actually, I'm really glad you said that. And then the speaker did a quick Google while I was on the call. He's like, oh, yeah, okay. Is there anything that is a no-go and to say or mention? And he was like, I was really glad you brought that up. So I think that we weren't nerding out like you, which I'm jealous, but
it's fun. It's fun.
It was serving,
But it was serving. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of thing is underappreciated. I think when you have a consultative approach, I'm a consultant and an advisor. So, I bring that mindset too. But a lot of people who even aren't formally consulting, they bring a consultative approach to their work. So I think it's that willingness to say there's an uncomfortable thing to be said, but it really needs to be said, because otherwise we won't get to the truth. And the truth is what is going to be useful here. There's another one of the values of the company I ran before I started KO Insights, the company I now run. I had a company called Meta Marketer, and my team and I came up with our value statements together. And one of the values that we articulated was not only speak truth to power, because we do think that's a really important value, but with an addendum on that, speak truth to power, but confront with compassion. And I feel like a lot of times people assume that people who are in power seats or in leadership positions are, sort of bulletproof, or they have no feelings about what they're dealing with. And I think it's really important to go into these kinds of situations with a lot of empathy and understanding for the difficulty of the
Yeah.
role and how much sort of psychic energy is involved in the process. So to
So
come
much.
to that with that kind of approach, like you described, to be able to say, listen, I'm kind of hearing something, like, can we call it out and talk about what's going on here? I think it's a real service that you did in
Yeah.
that call. And it was a real service to the speaker too, to be able to name it and work with it.